Montreal is sort of ground zero for my entrepreneurial career.
I asked them to sit under their photos, but there were no photos. So they were looking at me confused.
We all look the same, so just
Yeah,
so
like
you
the
know
same.
who's who.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. Super excited. The room's packed. My name's Gabriel Sundaram. I'm a co-founder at Attain, a multiple-time entrepreneur. Have been in the community for a long time, and I've been hanging out with CEOs a lot. So I've been COO of two startups, Bus.com and Mission. Kyle, my CEO from Bus.com, is here. Hey, Kyle. And so super happy to have this conversation with some great CEOs. So I'll do quick introductions. I think most of you in the room know the panelists, but very quickly, super excited. Andrew from Stay 22 has been working on Stay 22 now for 8 years, has a great journey. We'll talk about it a little bit tricky during COVID, but made it out really well and growing super fast as we talked about at the start of the day. Anna's here as well. Anna was one of the co-founders at Dialogue, which went public in 2021, correct? For 800 million. So thank you so much. Anna's working on a new startup called Corral. I think you're about a year into that journey, and so we'll talk about that as well. We have Nesto.
I'm Nesto.
You have Nesto being represented by Malik, of course. I looked at your shirt.
No, I know, like it's all about branding. Yeah,
it's all about branding. That was a plug for you. It's all over. So we have Malik from Nesto. So Malik has been an entrepreneur since the very beginning. So you started your first business in university, from what I heard, with your current CTO. So you guys have been working together for a long time. After that, you sold the business to Cassette. You're a leading digital Cassette, and then joined the Diagram crew to create Nesto. So thanks for making it. And then we have Joanne from PemPem. Thank you so much for coming. Joanne's the most studious of us, all on the panelists. So she has a degree in economics, master's in quantitative finance, and a PhD in operational management from Stanford. And so quite impressive. After studying supply chains for 5 years, 6 years-ish, you co-founded 2 years ago. Last year was a great year for you guys. You grew, I think I read, 2,600% last year?
Yeah, 26,000%
Yeah.
our monthly revenues.
Yeah,
1 year.
so amazing journey. So amazing, thanks everyone. Just to give a little bit of sense of who's in the room, the team put this slide together. So I know we had talked about on LinkedIn wanting to fill the room with as many founders as possible, and we were fairly successful. So a bunch of community people and investors joined us as well. But we have 216 founders and startup team members in the room representing 97 startups, of which 463 million was raised. And so the intention for the panel was really to talk to the founders in the room as much as possible, talk about our journeys, and share our learnings and insights. Awesome? Cool. So initially, I had sent the panelists a list of questions 2 weeks ago, and I don't think they were that great. I got some feedback that I think they were a little bit too superficial or high level. Malik sent me a nice email saying, hey, I want to talk about these topics. And so that inspired me this weekend.
Was it nice?
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm not satisfied with the questions. So I went back and I worked on the questions this weekend. And really the idea was to kind of like dig into the nitty gritty, right? And to really get to the core of what it is to build a startup. And so first question, I think it was a month ago in November, December, the Globe and Mail put out an article that talked about these $100 million companies. And I believe there were 20-something companies in Montreal that were on that list, including Nesto. And so I just want to jump right into it. What are you guys doing? What do you think companies that are scaling? Just for the record, Dialogue's not on the list because they're a public company. Lightspeed's not on the list because they're a public company. So these are private companies that have a $100 million value run rate. And so Malik, if I can throw this question to you since you're on this list, what do you think that you guys are doing, or what are you doing as a founder that separates you and allows you to get to this scale?
I haven't read the question that you've sent back. So what are we doing? It's I don't think it's anything unique against anybody else that is building a business. We need to be obsessed about what's the next best move and how can we bring that product to market. We've been obsessed about it from day one on shipping our product as fast as possible, get the learnings as fast as possible. I was impressed by the student panel, by the way.
Yeah.
I think they got it already. But you need to get the learning as fast as possible. Many startups don't get out and get their product out fast enough. I mean, so many startups never get to launch or properly launch their business without getting the learnings as fast as possible. So I think we've been shipping every week, every day, new feature, new ideas, new market. And I think this is our obsession about that for the last 8 years. So today, yeah, so I think it's about going fast. And as the CEO and the co-founder, just make sure your team goes fast.
Okay. So you mentioned in your email speed. You mentioned another word as well, intensity. So I wanted to ask you, because speed is a little bit easier for me to intellectualize and understand. I can go faster, I can ship faster, I can move faster. What did you mean by intensity?
I think it's easy to think I'm shipping something or I'm sending a piece of paper or I've reviewed it fast but it needs to be days in, days out. I don't say don't work hard all the time, but you should be working all the time. And it needs to be intense. Say I wake up in the morning, I'm in my shower, I think about what I'm going to do today, tonight, tomorrow, the week after, what I'm going to say. As soon as I get into my car, I call somebody and discuss a subject. I'm sure it can be very draining for the people working around us, but we're all like that. I think the co-founding team were really intense, and bringing that intensity to the team, you don't want comfort, because comfort will kill you as a startup. It's yeah.
That's helpful. It's very helpful.
Don't be scared.
Yeah.
Be intense with your legal team too.
Our friend Christian is in the front. Joanne, when we were talking about speed, and Anna as well, when we talked about speed, you mentioned for both of you the realities of the industries that you are building in. And Joanne was mentioning the online, offline reality. Anna was mentioning the regulatory reality. How do you balance speed with those aspects? Maybe, Joanne, you can start by sharing some thoughts.
Yeah, and I think what I mentioned as well is that so first of all, I fully agree with Malik. I think there's also different stages of a company. And so I think, for example, for us in 2023, we were more focused on getting our unit economics right rather than growing. Because if our unit economics weren't right, then volume and growth wasn't going to help much. But still there, so even though it wasn't on kind of growing the volume of the business, it was very high intensity experimentation. And so it's a different type of intensity, because experimentation, the big challenge you have there is that you're experimenting with your users, you're learning about your users, and there's a limit to how much you can learn within a week from users, just because they are absorbing of this as well, and they're using it, and as they use it, you learn, right? And so there's a limit to how fast you can go when you're in a learning phase, which I think makes the product market fit, kind of getting to product market fit can be particularly difficult because it's not always under your control. And so yes, it was, when I now compare 2024, which has been about growth, I'm like, that's like a whole different ballgame in terms of intensity and speed. So, but still, even in the experimentation phase, and I mean, we're still experimenting, but in that phase where you're not yet focused on growing the business, it's very rapid iteration. So that's something that we still did, even in the experimentation phase. I mean, I think what I find difficult in this intensity on a daily basis is also finding balance and making sure you're making the right decisions. Because sometimes it's going so fast and maybe you haven't slept much, or there's a lot of P1s on your plate, and sometimes I feel like you need to take a step back and to make your right decision, and finding that time and say, okay, I gotta like lay out the landscape and understand what's going on and make a right decision. I think that can be hard if you're like in the middle of the action all the time. So yeah, that's how I try to balance it.
Is that something that came later in your journey in terms of identifying that need to find a balance, or what was the difference?
Yeah, that's where my background in academia might have helped.
Okay.
I like to understand the system and understand the full picture before making decisions. So that might have helped. It's just in my nature. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Dialogue was in a very regulated industry. It's healthcare. So I still remember how the very first year, the very first few months, so when we were ready, we said, well, here's a number, text your medical questions to it and we'll reply. And then we were interviewing nurses with questions we were receiving, and we quickly realized this was absolutely not aligned with any sort of medical regulation. And so, so over time, built much more rigor around processes, obviously, and prioritize that. When I hear you talk about speed and intensity, to me, it's a mindset. It's not just doing things quickly, but I think it's this. To me, the way I interpret it, or for me, the way like that kind of translates is like obsession. And there's like things I obsess about, like I obsess about user experience. This is like one thing, like I think about it all the time. And at Coral, the co-founders, like I feel like that's the topic I talk about the most. And at Dialogue, I mean, we became the largest telemedicine company in Canada. And I think part of it was because we were obsessed with the user experience. We wanted it to be great. And the people we were hiring, we were obsessing about the training they were getting, because it was no longer the founders being there with the members, it was the medical team. And so I think it's just kind of going fast, but also delivering, learning from that kind of member or user interaction. But yeah, I think to me, it's this like crazy obsession.
Obsession is really good. I love obsession.
Me too. In the showers, this something goes to my brain and it just kind of like starts swirling, and then like I come out of it like, oh, I got an idea. This is a aha moment for me. So yeah. I think that's
100%, and I agree. Maybe one other thing that to add that it's important is we say Montreal is not that great, but there's really great people in Montreal where we can ask advice from, and I think I'm lucky that I have great investors, so I can bounce ideas with investors, with mentors. Overshare, puis you'll get feedback, puis you'll get to the right balance, I think, faster by getting feedback from people around you. Many times, the founder, we tend to, let's keep everything for us and let's deliver by ourselves. But I think a lot of feedback are and is available around you.
Maybe I can loop in Andrew to the conversation on that topic. We were just talking backstage about how State 22 had a pretty crazy journey during COVID. You had just closed the term sheet. Some of your investors pulled out. Your revenue dropped by 90%. And you were kind of like in this point where you're staring into the abyss. Montreal, Canada, we've been talking about it. It's interesting because we like to celebrate our successes, but we don't often surround people when they're in the trenches and they haven't hit success yet. And it's an interesting phenomena. I lived in the US for 6 years and really saw them more celebrating success, even for founders who haven't got it there. It's like, let's celebrate ambition. And so can you talk a little bit about that reality of pre-2023, 2024, where you were crushing it, and the reality and the people you had around you that were supporting you before versus now?
Different type of people, for sure.
Yeah.
So pre-pandemic, the company was growing about 400% year over year. We were having a good time, killing it. We got some investors on board. Half of them decided to not send the money after we closed our round. So we were kind of like disappointed about the outcome, but it forced us to pivot. And out of this, we decided to, we're going to own our journey moving forward, and we're not going to become dependent on others. And I'm seeing the same thing in the States. Like in Canada, we're so good in terms of supporting and putting in people in the spotlight that been there, done that, like at the top of your level. But we all know what's happening then. Like, t'es à ton top, qu'est-ce qui se passe après? Crush and burn. Alors qu'on devrait supporter les gens qui sont dans leur journey. On devrait mettre de l'avant les grandes entreprises comme les Office Vibe qui sont arrivés avec des cultures incroyables dès le départ. Des cookies qui ont changé la façon des gens de pouvoir apprendre par eux-mêmes à faire à manger, des gens qui n'auraient jamais fait à manger par avant. Mais à la place de supporter dès le départ, puis d'en parler dans les médias, puis de les inviter dans des événements comme ici, ce qu'on fait à la place, c'est qu'on attend de prendre les grosses compagnies, puis une fois qu'ils sont rendus dans les médias, on sait qu'est-ce qui se passe après, on va les voir au dragon, puis là, on sait qu'est-ce qu'il va y avoir une fraude, il va y avoir un problème majeur, on va les voir qu'ils vont faire une faillite après. C'est toujours la même chose. Fait que si vous voulez voir dans les médias au Québec, c'est 100% sûr qu'un mois après, on va la voir, puis ça va être down the floor. Puis, en contraire, on devrait prendre des entreprises, puis oui, il y en a plein qui ne vont pas succéder, mais c'est pas grave. On devrait les voir au fur et à mesure, puis les mettre de l'avant pour se dire, wow, belle culture d'entreprise, incroyable stratégie, go-to-market. On devrait mettre tout cela de l'avant, puis oui, il y en a qui vont succéder, puis il y en a qui vont échouer. Mais au moins, on va entendre parler d'eux au fur et à mesure, à la place de toujours mettre sur les mêmes bêtes, faire comme, bon, ben, hein, we know what the story was going to happen next.
As they say, you learn more from failures than you do from success. And so definitely thank you for that. I think it was a very important message to communicate. I have a lot of friends who are founders, and they've expressed that story so many times. Before their exit, nobody wanted to talk to them. After their exit, everybody wanted to be their best friend. And so let's support our founders.
No, man, can I push back on this?
Whoa, push.
I think it's your job to get in the media. When you think about obsession, it was one of our obsession from the beginning is what's the story that journalist want to talk about. La presse have a series about a new company or new business model or whatever. Puis Karim and the other journalists, I don't remember his name, are writing every week about something. They're looking for stories. You need to show up. I mean, you need to craft the story so they can present it. I think they're out there. They're looking for stories. I don't think founders do an amazing job at getting out there and presenting themselves. It's easy. I love to blame the investors and the journalists, but I think it's part of the job of the founder to think, what do they want to learn and talk about?
They should still talk about the journey. So the main problem is like people like you, once you raise $300 million, they'll talk about you in the news because it's a fundraising, big customer, whatever you acquired. If you pitch those journalists, they don't care about if you're a small company growing even 500% or 2,000% year over year, like they're going to put you on the side. They should still promote whatever you have as special, because most of us, if you're here as a founder, you have a startup that's growing, you find out something that most didn't. So you should be able to promote those. You don't care about PR anymore, unless I'm mistaken. Like
you always care about PR. That's another rule. Always be caring about
I see
PR.
your stocks. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I saw your CMO in the crowd.
Yeah. It's all about the brand. But maybe one last thing. It's not really popular, but I think 2 months. I think it's good when we debate. And
Yeah.
Okay.
It's spicy.
When we launched the company, I think we were like 6 months in. Nobody knew Nesto. Maybe it's maybe not the best topic today, but the title of the article was "The Amazon of Mortgages," and it got super successful. It's the thing that I promoted the most, but nobody knew Nesto. But we found an angle, and I think it's a bit part of the founders to think about what do they want to learn about.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry. I'm going to jump back a little bit. You were talking about obsession. I think I know the answer now. Can we have balance as founders, or is it something that when you signed up as a founder, you're all in, and that's just the way it's going to be? Joanne, you were talking a little bit about finding this balance. Is it just something you sign up for?
I mean, you're definitely all in.
Yeah.
But it's just, the way I think about it is that I'm building a company that I think is going to change the world. And I know that changing the world isn't going to go overnight. So I know I'm in this for the long run. That means like, minimum 5-10 years if we're talking venture scale. You got to stay sharp and on your game for that period of time. And so this is really a marathon and not a sprint. And so, yes, you're all in, but you're planning on a marathon, right? And so that means you got to take care of yourself and the people around you. And so I think, you have to find a balance. And for sure, it's not going to be the same balance every day. I mean, there's going to be days days and weeks on end where it's really, really intense and you have to put some things aside, but then you better catch up afterwards. But I think,
But positioning it as a marathon, I think, is a good analogy for sure. One thing that we were going to talk about, Andrew, a little bit was coaches. So when I started in venture 15 years ago now, it wasn't popular to have a coach. I can't think of any portfolio companies that had coaches. In today's world, it is something that's popular. Andrew, from what I understand, you have a coach. I think we've talked about it. It is like a sport. It is a marathon. Why surround yourself with people who can help?
Why go the other way? Like, this is the best shortcut you can get. It's definitely the number one thing you should be putting out on the list. It's an investment in yourself, just like going to school, just making sure you can go to like university, learn more, self-learning classes, reading books, podcasts. You're investing in yourself in the end. That's the easiest answer.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to add something I've learned. I know we talk a lot about coaches for like on a professional level, but I think a sports coach also really matters. Just staying fit really helps my brain to work properly under stress. So I've learned that's like maybe an atypical thing, but it helps.
Anything to add? We are running short on time. The panel has gone very quickly. There's a lot of students in the room, so I did want to squeeze a couple of questions in for the students. Joanne, as we mentioned at the beginning, you've had a long academic career. Can you share any insights or thoughts around, for the students that are just getting into the business world, what things from university are helpful to keep in terms of mindset when you're getting into the workforce, and what things are good to forget?
So I agree with the previous panel. There's a lot of good things that you can take from academia and use in business life. This includes things like, questioning data all the time. The results, when you're in academia, you always question what you see. That's what you're trained to do, and you try to see if this is making sense. So that's one. Your curiosity, right? Constant curiosity, going into user experience, right? I think persistence, if you've done a PhD, you know about persistence as well. Yeah, I think, just on the other side, things that are very different. Teamwork, number one. It's a big plus of working in startups and in venture. I think teamwork is just so much fun. I think it's one way we talked about grind when we spoke, and one way to break the grind is to have really fun co-founders. It makes the obsession and the intensity so much more fun. So that's kind of different. And what's also very different is, again, the speed. In academia, you really learn to perfect your analysis and your research, and then you publish this paper, especially in the field where I was at, you would take years to publish a paper, different from computer science, of course, but and you just don't have that luxury in a business. And so I think for people going out, thinking about moving away from academia to startup, you really have to get into that intensity and that speed and give up on perfection and just experimenting in a much more iterative and rapid way. That's very different, yeah.
And I read in the Globe and Mail that you took a little bit of time, was it during university or in between CEGEP and university, to travel?
Yeah, between CEGEP and university.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that decision? And from what I read, it seemed like it was an important moment for you to learn some important lessons.
So I took a year off. I called it my gap year. I think it's very common in Europe, in Australia, very not common in Canada. And actually what happened is that there's one university in the US that I wanted to go to, and I got accepted into a program there, the exact program I wanted to go into, but it was a summer program between my 2 years of CEGEP. And I went there and I realized that I just didn't love it. And I came back and I applied to McGill. I deferred by a year and I went traveling. in one of my CEGEP classes, there was an article on dynamic pricing in aircraft pricing that I read, and I found the topic really interesting. And when I read the bio of the guy who wrote it, he was named like the top manager of Scotland, and I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool to work for the guy. So I sent him an email. And then I sent him another email, and finally his assistant got back to me, and he helped organize at first it was like a summer internship, but from that I actually built my own summer, I guess my own year traveling from country to country and working in different places. And so I think for me, like it was a time to try new things. And it was really interesting because as I went back to university, my focus was on grades, obviously. I think that's important and what allowed me to, so I started my career at McKinsey, and it's what allowed me to even get an interview. But it also, then I was kind of on this path of like discovering what is it that I love and trying new things and taking risks. And, university years to me ended up being this like powerful time to just try new things and discover what it is that I'm good at, that I enjoy doing. That was really helpful. Fast forward, I wasn't as intentional about it back then, but looking back on it, it was really helpful because it helped shape the way I am as an entrepreneur today.
Thanks. Malik, Andrew, I know both of you started your businesses right after university and during university. Anything to share for the students in the room?
I mean, the students before were amazing. So,
Yeah.
like, listen to them.
Listen to them. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was great to hear.
But it's the best way to get your first job, probably.
Il n'y aura pas de meilleur timing pour vous lancer en affaires. Vous n'avez aucune responsabilité. Vous n'avez pas de burden. Vous êtes capable de pouvoir vivre des petits salaires encore en ce moment. Il y en a beaucoup d'entre vous en ce moment qui doivent trouver ça la situation qui est très difficile. Les taux d'intérêt sont en train d'augmenter. Le marché est en train de se contracter également. Puis c'est le meilleur moment pour se lancer parce que vous n'aurez jamais une aussi belle opportunité. Quand vous allez vouloir commencer à faire un montant d'argent de 35 000, 50 000, 75 000 par année, vouloir se lancer à son compte, quand vous êtes rendu avec une hypothèque, quand vous êtes rendu avec des paiements, des amis qui vont au restaurant, ça devient énormément difficile. C'est là qu'il faut lancer. Vous attendez pas, c'était hier le meilleur moment, aujourd'hui la deuxième meilleure option. Puis en plus, il y a plein d'employés qui sont disponibles parce qu'ils ne trouvent pas des emplois présentement qui sont très rémunérés. Go for it, allez les chercher, lancez mon affaire tout de suite.
Thank you, Andrew. Love it.
I would also add, in university, I think it's so important to find good mentors, people who open the door for you. I remember my network in university was basically not very much, but finding these people along the journey who know people in venture, who can put you in front of a pitch, and even if it's just for feedback, it doesn't matter because as an entrepreneur, you end up just capturing opportunities. But I think like this mentorship and having models that you follow is actually quite important because you don't have the same experience as you do after your first, second, third, fourth startup where you've raised capital and now you know people, you know who to call in university. I think that's actually something that's quite helpful.
And I find people are always looking for young, ambitious people who want to help. And so put yourself out there, take a little bit of a risk, and you'll be surprised in terms of what happens.
One thing to add, share your idea. It's probably really special for you, but maybe we've heard it before. Yeah. It's really about execution.
Yeah.
It's always about execution. Yeah. It's just execution. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We do have time for one question. If anyone has a pressing question in the room, I see a couple of hands up in the middle. I can't see with the lights. Go for it. Whoever has the mic, just you can choose. Go, yeah.
This was super inspiring. Thank you, everyone, for your points. I really like today's topic because it really touches on a little bit of hustle culture in today's generation. For the upcoming founders, who are in their 20s, who are discovering themselves, who really like the game of entrepreneurship, but also struggle with being obsessed and not knowing when to, back off and just listen to themselves. What is your perspective on hustle culture and being obsessed in terms of mental health?
Find something you love. I think obsessing about something you want to solve, something you're angry about, passionate about, and doing it with people you have fun. Earlier, we talked about the journey. The journey is so important. So I think the problem needs to be exciting and uplifting for you. And I think the people who you do it with have to be like really fun to work with.
Yes, it's fun. It's intense, but fun doesn't mean it's not fun. So you need to enjoy the ride. Let's either we have La Ronde in Montreal. It's great, a roller coaster. It goes up and down, and I mean, you get emotions, feedback loop, everything. I say you need to take care of yourself, but listen to yourself. I guess use dialogue or other.
Or choral.
Or choral.
You were talking about like the balance. I think life is kind of a triangle. So it's between like you, your personal life, friends and family, and business. And it's impossible to have a balance where you're always in the middle of it. And it's per phase. So once, maybe for 6 months, 6 years, whatever amount of time, 6 days, you'll have to really focus on one of them. And as soon as you feel your own personal life balance will be on the side where your friends and family are leaving you because they haven't seen you in years, maybe it's time to call back a bit and start to see them again. So it's a right balance that you have to move left and right over time.
I just want to say my daughter is here.
I'm going to add one more thing, which is because I heard explicitly the word hustle.
Yeah.
And so I agree with all of this 100%. But I will add, like, it's also important to know your business and know when it's not working anymore. Or at least that particular product is no longer working, and maybe you got to go and do something, some other product, because you might still be passionate about the problem and you still want to solve the problem, but maybe the solution you found isn't working, and you've got to be realistic about that as well. So, and that's again going back to like making the right decisions, right? And it's like keeping sane in your mind. Like yes, you're all on 100%. You're super passionate about what you're doing, but that also includes being honest with yourself about whether you're solving the problem or whether it's just something you wish was working. You know.
But that's really important, and like it's true that you have to take care of your mental health. Like it obsession for the sake of obsession because somebody else said obsession is important is not the right reason to obsess. Like I think it's like your mental health. Like if your mental health is not doing well, you know, you were talking about the long journey and being able to take decisions. Like it's really important to stop and distance yourself and know when to do it. So I think we should be careful not to go into that culture, which is like, if you're a founder, then all you do is work and don't not see anyone, and your mental health is a mess and you're a mess. Like, I don't think those things need to be true. I think mental health is actually really important, and the way to do it is through like some of the answers. Yeah. So.
And they're not mutually exclusive, right? You can be obsessed and you can have balance
happy,
as well.
I think.
It's fun.
I think all of us are pretty happy right now.
Yeah. I think, like you said, you take time to work out, you take time to spend with your friends. But one thing, maybe, at least for me, what I realized, the difference between pre and post student life is you have a lot of time when you're a student, and you just replace a lot of that free time. Instead of watching Netflix or playing video games, you play a different game, which is your business and your life. And you're not grinding and forcing yourself to do it because you love doing it. Like Malik was saying, you're in the shower, you're thinking about it because you love what you're working on. And so I think that's an important aspect. So we're out of time, unfortunately. Thank you so much, everyone, for making the time.